Let's go to the Samsung S95B, the QD-OLED. Yes, I know my review has taken a little while to get here. That's because the released a firmware update. So you may remember that Vincent found some issues with Filmmaker Mode. I was able to confirm that doing our own tests at this side with a UK model. I believe he imported a US model. So we could tell that they were doing the same thing. They were running the same firmware, which was 12.04, if I remember correctly. So a new firmware has been launched. And unfortunately, in terms of all the measurements and stuff that I've taken, they are now redundant. I'm going to have to do all the testing again and run most of my tests again. And it's a good job that I did take that line, because I have found a few things that are a result of the firmware update. So one of those things are that Filmmaker Mode is now correct in terms of accuracy. PQ EOTF tracking is correct. It does it to the ST2084 standard. So there's no over brightening going on there. There's no differences of window size. So if you put in 8%, 11%, 18% window, whatever window size you put in, it will measure correctly. And the problem was on the last firmware was if you put a 10% window up, it measured accurately, but then put a 9% or an 8% window and it measured inaccurately. So that was the issue that was highlighted to start with. That has now been fixed. I can confirm that that's been fixed as well, having done those tests to make sure that that is the case. So that's great. Well done to Samsung for listening and fixing that. It would have been nice to have a product come out that didn't have that, because it did point to, is this TV cheating? Does it know that a 10% window is being applied, and is it applying what it thinks that person putting the 10% window in wants to see? So, you know, we don't know if that was the case. Evidence is circumstantial to that, but that issue has been fixed in firmware, so it shouldn't be an issue anymore. One thing I have noticed though, and it's a little bit concerning, and obviously once I can get measurable results that I can feed back to Samsung, I will be doing that, is the ABL seems to be very aggressive. I mean, overly aggressive in terms of what it's doing. An example of that was I was running the TV, playing a Netflix film, sound turned down, but I tend to do that in the background and then come in and sit for 5 minutes and watch and let the sets run in properly. On this occasion, it was what's the Ryan Reynolds sci-fi thing? It's gone completely off my head.
The Adam
Project. So I had that running. It was fine to start with in HDR. Went back about halfway through the film. I'd been doing other jobs with my backs of TVs. You can see how they're set up here, and this is my work setup. So I turned around and it was incredibly dim, the image. So normally if that happens with ABL, if you bring up the Netflix menu, it'll fix itself and it'll come. Didn't do that. It was still dark. So I had to actually come out of the whole application and then start Netflix again, and then start the film again. And it started where it had left off and back to where it should be in terms of HDR picture. It's done this on numerous occasions, but it hasn't done it in a repeatable fashion. So some days it will play fine and you won't see any ABL issues. Other days, everything you watch, if you leave it for 20 to 40 minutes, it really darkens. So there is an issue there. It's something that I'm trying to get to the bottom of with further testing. And because it's not repeatable, when I set the camera up for 20 minutes and let the camera run for 20 minutes and the battery deplete and it doesn't do it, it's quite frustrating. So I am trying to capture it on camera as well, so I can feed all that back in. What do I think? Now I've spent some time, watched some movies and so on. It's brilliant. It really is. I mean, it's an OLED TV, so you've got a good starting point. It is still a little bit oversaturated out of filmmaker modes in the movie mode and so on. And I think a lot of people are mistaking that for brightness, color brightness. It oversaturates, which can trick you into thinking that you're seeing more color volume, and you're not. But there is more color volume to be had. So it's a shame that a lot of the picture presets out of the box are cooked to look a certain way. they're cooked, so they look good on a showroom floor. It's not really how you want to be watching images at home if you want to see accuracy and so on. In terms of accuracy, it now gets accurate. It now looks really, really good. It's a stunning TV for a first generation of the technology as well. It's very, very good. I'm really excited to get the Sony, and the Sony should be coming in very soon to see what happens there, because they really do a good job, Sony. They are very much creators intent, which is almost the opposite of what Samsung go for popularity. Sony go for accuracy. So it'll be interesting to see that. But it's looking like a great TV. I'm hoping to get the review finished by the end of this week. And one of the questions was the Netflix app on the TV? Yes, it was the built-in Netflix app. It wasn't a separate source. So it was through the Tizen system that I was using it. Again, I can get it to repeat. It's just not repeatable on a consistent basis. It's very picky to get it to trigger. But again, we want to try and figure out what is actually happening so we can feed that back to Samsung and have them correct it. But in all other respects, it seems to be performing the way you would expect it to perform. It's great for a new technology. There are quirks. There are things that it doesn't quite do correctly, and things like motion and so on are improved, but they're still not up to the standard of Panasonic and Sony and Philips in those terms. So there are little weak areas with it, but overall as a package, it looks like it's going to be a cracking TV. And like I say, I'm going to try and work through and try and get the initial review anyway, because we purchased this one. It's hanging around for a few months yet, so we'll try and get the initial review up and the initial videos and settings and so on up by the end of the week.